Oh yeah, everybody. When you hear that music, you know what time it is. Let's let it play out for a minute. Folks, the madness has arrived. By the time you guys are seeing this, just in a few hours, the grandest of all postseason tournaments begins. And hopefully, in magical fashion. 68 teams. We narrow it down to 64, to 32, to 16, to 8, to 4, to 2, and then to 1. The March Madness brackets, one of the most famous events in the entire country. The entire country's filling out a bracket this week, and so did I. My previous success filling out a bracket, I like to call myself pretty good at these. I am a knowledgeable expert at the game of basketball, particularly at the college level. Obviously, I can't watch every single team in the country, but doing extensive research on all these teams, I have a pretty good understanding of what teams do, why they do it, and how they operate. And let's see what happens. I'm not going to get a perfect bracket. I'm going to have a team probably that goes to the Elite Eight that maybe gets eliminated in round 1. That is what happens. But today, I am here to settle the madness, and I'm here to give you my 2025 March Madness NCAA tournament bracket predictions, because it doesn't get much better than this. And let me tell you, I'm not like everyone else. I have different notes. I have different thoughts. I think differently about these teams than everyone else does, and some of the other analysts do. And I don't have Duke winning it all. I don't have Auburn winning it all. I'm going to tell you exactly who I do and everything here in this episode as I try to get the best bracket that I've personally accomplished predicting March Madness. I'm going to pop up my ESPN bracket in just a second. Unfortunately, I don't want to have to refill it out, so you guys are going to see, but just try to stay along here with the journey. Try not to skip ahead if you can, as you guys can maybe appreciate some of the analysis that I'm giving into each of these games, and then obviously we'll break down each matchup, but some will be more extensive than others. I think, kind of just to start off, when Auburn plays Alabama State, if Alabama State proves me wrong, then they prove me wrong. Congratulations, but I'm not going to spend too much time previewing the fact that Auburn's going to win a game like that, and et cetera. We'll get into some games. Currently, by the time I'm recording this, Mount St. Mary's is locking up a win over American, while Xavier in Texas is still yet to play. That will change my philosophy, and I'll break that down when we get to that first 4 matchup, and then the winner of that playing Illinois in the first round. Why are we wasting any time? Let's jump into it. Here's my bracket, and we're going to kind of jump through different formats here as I show you this bracket. I'm going to show you this one because I think it covers, most of the screen for now. As I usually do, I'm going to start off in the East region here in the top right. Hopefully you can see where my mouse is. As you can see, American Mount St. Mary's. Mount St. Mary's is pulling away with a win. I was credentialed for the MAC tournament wearing the sweatshirt right here. Mount St. Mary's is a very good basketball team. They fight harder. They just find ways to win. And clearly against American, they're figuring out ways to make things happen offensively, but they're not going to be able to do anything against Duke. They're one of the top teams in the country. So it's great for the conference. It's great for the program. The Mount St. Mary's is getting an NCAA tournament win, but it's only to be really just taken off the floor by a far superior Blue Devils team who moves on to the round of 32. I find this Mississippi State Baylor matchup to be an interesting one. Neither team really impresses me in terms of their Ken Pom and net. Nothing really stands out. Baylor's offense, both of these teams are very similar. Their defense leaves a lot to be desired. Their offense is, two of the best in the country. I think at the end of the day, and we're going to have this discussion, it's going to be SEC versus Big 12 because 14 teams made it from the SEC. Hopefully by the time you guys are seeing this, you've also seen, or hopefully it's posted, a YouTube short I made talking about kind of the question marks that revolve around the SEC. It's the most teams ever from one conference we've seen in one individual tournament. 14 out of the 16 teams in the conference made it. Mississippi State is one of them. Mississippi State is a team that went 8-10 in conference play this year, and yet is in the NCAA tournament. So it's just valuing the competition level of the SEC, and we're going to break that down. Overall, I like Mississippi State more. Baylor just hasn't shown me much this season. They haven't been great in the biggest moments. They're 3-9 against top 25 teams and 5-12 against quad one. That's just not a recipe for success to me. So I love what Coach Drew is doing. It's a great program, but I like Mississippi State. To move on, Oregon and Liberty is a matchup I've kind of gone back and forth with because Liberty is a team that can hang around. There's a reason why they're at 12. You look at some statistics, and Liberty can hang around with some teams. They're 6th in the country in three-point percentage, and that's a good recipe to success. Liberty scoring 76 points a game, nothing major, but that is how you win in this month as a team to get an upset. To me, I look at this Oregon team and I see the success they've had in conference. It's been a rocky season, up and down for sure. Nate Biddle, Jackson Shellstead, kind of both taking the throne as their top players on the All Big Ten third team this season. 8-7 in Quad 1, 8-2 in Quad 2. You've beaten teams like Alabama. You've lost to teams like Nebraska. What Oregon team are we going to be getting, when these two teams face off on Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern? Because I don't know. Personally, I don't want to have the guts to take Liberty here. I don't love that basketball team. I'm going to take the Ducks, but on upset alert there against the Flames. Arizona, Akron. I do have the guts here, though, to take Akron in this matchup. They scored the 8th most points in the country this year in terms of their point per game average. That's a recipe of success. This Arizona team is good. They fit the requirements that I'm going to break down later of a statistic in terms of KenPom, where 90% of tournament teams fit a certain requirement. We're going to break that down in a minute. Arizona is one of the only teams I believe can win a national championship this year. I don't think there's many. They can. I just see them losing. I mean, you're 4-7 against top 25 teams, 10-11 against Quad 1. I'm not really high on Arizona. I think Akron could score the ball at will, and that's how you win in this tournament. So I do like Akron to beat Arizona in a 13 for upset. By the way, for those of you on audio platforms, hopefully you guys are keeping up. Maybe you're looking at a bracket as you're doing this, but unfortunately you won't be able to see this bracket unless you're watching the video portion of the podcast on Spotify. BYU VCU, one of the most interesting matchups because BYU's offense is one of the most fantastic in the country, and VCU's defense is one of the most underrated, and honestly, one of the best defenses in the country. 8th in points per game allowed, 23rd according to KenPom in terms of their defensive rating. For BYU, they're 11th in KenPom's offensive efficiency. So it's essentially an offense versus defense game. I think BYU's been more prepared playing Big 12 competition all year. I like BYU over VCU. Watch out for the upset there. I'm really excited to watch that game because those are two teams either could pull it out. But again, do you trust the offense, the defensive side more? And I don't trust the consistency and the reliability of the Rams offense. So I like BYU to move on. Wisconsin, Montana. I don't want to overthink it. Give me the Badgers. They've had a great season. I think giving them a 3 seed after losing in the Big Ten championship and giving Michigan a 5 seed, we're going to break that down. I think that was a little strange by the committee, but I like Wisconsin to move on. St. Mary's, Vanderbilt. Every single year, I feel like St. Mary's is here, and every single year I'm not impressed. It's the same team every year. They're a great defensive team, 8th in defensive efficiency according to KenPom, but offensively, they just never have it. They never have that edge that could pull them over the top. I love what Vanderbilt's done on offense this year. I see their wins this season, and it's like Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, Texas A&M. I think that's a good recipe for success, in my opinion. I think there's a good basketball team in Vanderbilt. I don't think they're great. That's why I have them losing in round 2 if you're looking ahead there. But I think Vanderbilt pulls it out in the 10-7 upset. And 10-7 isn't really a major upset in college basketball anyway. So I like the Commodores to they're the Commodores, right? Yes, they are. Yeah, I like the Vanderbilt Commodores to move on there. And then don't overthink it, Alabama over Robert Morris over there. Let's go ahead into the Midwest region. We're just going to scroll down right here. We're going to move on. Houston versus, who is it? SIU Edwardsville. Yeah, SIU, don't believe it. Shout out Andrew Catalan. I like Houston, obviously, to win that. A 1 seed, one of the best 1 seeds in recent memory. Gonzaga, Georgia. You guys are going to hear what I think about Gonzaga. I'm not high on Georgia. I don't like what they've done. I think they were an average SEC team this year at best. They really didn't do well against SEC competition. They didn't do well against high-level competition, and they got in because they played SEC-level competition. That's kind of been my problem with the way the committee, their philosophy in terms of picking these games, is that I think they literally just picked teams because of the conference they were in. Oklahoma and Georgia shouldn't be 9 seeds. And I think Gonzaga should be probably a 5 seed or better. And we're going to talk about that as they move forward. So I like Gonzaga to move on. Clemson, McNeese. This is one where you got to look for the upset. Last year, everyone wanted to pick McNeese as well. But they ended up falling short. I'm pretty sure to Gonzaga, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. Look, this McNeese team is very good defensively. I believe they're stout. And offensively, they've shown that they could be a great team. But again, they lost by 21 to Gonzaga in the first round last year. I don't like how they've done the NCAA tournament in the past. I look at this Clemson team and I've said, look, when it works, you've beaten Duke and Kentucky. You're 5-3 against quad one teams. Chase Hunter's been fantastic. I like Clemson to move on. I actually am not going to pick the 12-5. I'm a huge 12-5 upset guy, and you're going to find that out throughout this video. But I am going to pick Clemson over McNeese in this one. I will pick the upset over here, though. That's another 13th seed upset for me. I like High Point over Purdue. I do. I think that what makes this matchup so enticing is you have Purdue, who's 12th in the country in field goal percentage, and High Point, who's 7th in the country in field goal percentage. And yes, you're playing different competition, but I think you're going to see two of the most efficient offenses. They know the spots to get to. They know how to make shots, contested or open. They know how to get open looks. This is a very, very good matchup. High Point's a team that received votes to be ranked this year. Purdue's a team that's been trying to rebound after losing Zach Edey to the NBA. I think this is a great matchup. I think High Point wins it in a very, very tight game, and I'm very, very excited to tune into that one, which is going to be tomorrow in just a few hours by the time you're probably viewing this video. Illinois playing Texas versus Xavier. Again, we don't know who that is by the time of this recording. If it is Texas, I could see the upset happening. Xavier, I don't think, has the offensive firepower. They could shoot the three ball, but I don't think they have the offensive firepower. Texas, they play in the SEC. They've done well in the SEC. They played well as of late. If it is Texas, I'd still pick Illinois, but I watch out for the upset. I am going to pick the Fighting Illinois. I know, since I do not know who that is going to be, I would 100% pick them over the Xavier Musketeers of the Big East. I'm also going to pick Kentucky over Troy. Don't overthink it. Kentucky doing some great things this year. UCLA, Utah State is another tough one. These 7-10s are always so hard to just comprehend in your mind. It's not like UCLA, what they've done is great. It's not as great as what they've done in previous years, but I also think that, Utah State's played in the Mountain West all year, while UCLA has played in the Big Ten. And I think that there is a difference between the competition that UCLA is playing on a night-by-night basis between Utah State, and that's going to make them more prepared for NCAA tournament basketball. I like UCLA, and then I like Tennessee, the Volunteers, over Wofford. We're going to go over here to Auburn versus Alabama State. They were kind of my example of, the don't overthink it earlier. I was shocked Auburn was given the number 1 overall seed, if you want me to be honest with you. This is an Auburn team that's lost 3 of its last 4 games. Johnny Broom's fantastic. This is a team that's been efficient all season. They're one of the best teams in the country, but I think they've shown their vulnerabilities these past few weeks, and they're not invincible like many thought they were at the beginning of the year. So Auburn over Alabama State. But if you guys are looking ahead of my bracket, I'm not really high on Auburn after watching what they've done to end this year. Creighton versus Louisville. A lot of people, and my first initial reaction was that Louisville was ranked lower than they should have been in terms of their seeding. I don't know. I see 2-5 against top 25 teams. I see 4-6 against teams in the quad one. They have won 11 games in a row until losing to Duke in the ACC championship. But I do think the ACC is weaker. Like, you have Duke, sure. You have Clemson, sure. I don't think UNC is that great. I don't think Louisville is that great. Meanwhile, Creighton's shown its vulnerabilities too. They almost lost to DePaul in the Big East tournament, which could have put them in jeopardy of missing the tournament entirely. But I love the Ryan Kalkbrenner, Stephen Ashworth combination. I think that's going to be good enough for the 9th-seeded Blue Jays to prevail. Michigan versus UC San Diego. This is one of the best matchups of the first round. If you guys read my article on the top first-round matchups, or the first-round matchups to tune into, you'd see the Wolverines and the Tritons on that list. To me, I'm looking at this Michigan team, and I'm saying, how are they a 5th seed? I think the committee gave them a really, really bad matchup here. You don't give the Big Ten champion the 5th best seed of any Big Ten team, a conference they just won, and then give them the best mid-major in the country. You don't do that. I think that was a very, very horrible decision by the committee. I don't think you give Michigan that kind of battle in the first round, but I think they'll prevail. I mean, I'm not trying to deny what UC San Diego's done. They're fantastic. They're one of 5 teams in the country to win 30-plus games this year. Hayden Gray is a defensive monster. Anawania Tate Jones has been great for them as well. He could score the ball at will. I love what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball as well, kind of the underrated aspect of this team. And again, they were fantastic in conference play this year, but I like Michigan. I just think the Wolverines are a great team, and you have Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf in the interior, and that's going to be tough for a mid-major Tritons team to stop. So I like the Big Ten Michigan team to move on, and I do like Texas A&M to prevail over Yale. Kind of like I said about Xavier, what Yale does so well is they could shoot the 3 ball at will. They've won 16 of their last 17 games, and they did pull off an upset last year. So there's the foundation. John Palakidis has been great for them. Ivy League basketball just can't compare to the SEC. Texas A&M has too much firepower on both sides of the ball. They were 7-5 against top 25 competition this year. I just don't think Yale's going to be able to keep up with that. I could see this being a really close game at halftime, but I just don't think Yale can keep up with that for 40 minutes. Ole Miss versus North Carolina. I've been so tempted to pick North Carolina so many times after watching what they did last night against San Diego State at the time of this recording. But at the same time, I'm looking at North Carolina's resume and I'm saying, you're 1-12 against quad one teams. You're 1-8 against teams in the top 25. And one win against San Diego State isn't going to change my philosophy there. They got somehow into the tournament for keeping it close with Duke without their player of the year in Cooper Fly. It's tremendous. It's unbelievable. It's unfathomable to me, actually, how North Carolina made the NCAA tournament. Clearly, they're playing great basketball with their win against San Diego State. And I want to pick them here because they're the type of team where the shots are falling. It's North Carolina. But no, I'm not even a huge fan of what Ole Miss is doing. But I can't look at their resume and realistically put North Carolina in the round of 32. I like Ole Miss. I like Iowa State. Some people are picking Lipscomb, which I can appreciate. But to me, Iowa State is in that echelon of teams that could win a national championship this year, 10-7 against quad one competition. I like the Cyclones to move on. Marquette, New Mexico. I don't love Marquette. I also don't love New Mexico. This is a matchup. There's some matchups you wish you didn't have to pick. Right now on the screen, I have New Mexico, but I'm actually going to make a last-minute change. Cam Jones versus Donovan Dett, that's a great matchup. Two of the best guards in the country. I like Marquette actually to move on over New Mexico. I don't think the logos are that great. I think they're getting here. I think the committee also had some Mountain West bias. I think New Mexico did some great things in the Mountain West, but that's not going to translate when you play a tough Big East style of basketball, and I think Shaka Smart's going to have this team go to work in the first round. Michigan State, Bryant. I'm actually going to make my face bigger for this one because I need to talk to you guys about this. I'm actually going to take this off for a minute. The Spartans are going to win this game. However, on the contrary, do not be surprised if Bryant wins this game. I don't have the guts to pick them because logically it would not make sense. It would not be logical for me as a journalist and as an expert of this game to pick the Bryant Bulldogs to move on. But I also look at this Bryant team and I say, obviously you haven't played the competition this year. You're in the American East Conference. But you're fifth in the country in rebounds. You're third in the country in blocks. You've won 6 straight. Raphael Pinson is an absolute bucket. I do see those things. And foundationally and mechanically, they're doing the right things. They're doing the things you need to do to pull off an upset in the NCAA tournament. Michigan State's offense isn't fantastic. And maybe that could be the separator here. Because Bryant offensively has scored the 23rd most points in the country, according to points per game. Now, when you translate that to KenPom, it's not great. But again, mechanically and foundationally, I think the principles that are needed to pull off an upset of this magnitude in the NCAA tournament, Bryant checks off all the boxes. I'm picking the Spartans, but be careful. Be careful and do not be surprised if Michigan State does prevail. I'm just going to leave it at that. As we move on and we wrap up with just one more first round region to go. I'm going to go more extensive into these first round games simply because with these first round games, we know what they're going to be. The other matchups, they're hypothetical, so I'm not going to go way too deep into them. We're moving on to one final region to preview, and it is the West region. Leading off, the Florida Gators are going to move on against Norfolk State. UConn versus Oklahoma, two teams defensively that are really struggling right now. Two offenses that are inconsistent and rely on its three-point shot. For UConn, if Liam McNeely or Alex Carabin are solo ball, if one of them's on, they're one of the best teams in the country. But there's no guarantee that they are going to be on. Someone's going to have to go nuts for UConn, but I also think someone's going to have to go nuts for Oklahoma. And I see a 6-12 record in the SEC, a 4-9 record against top 25 competition. And I do trust Dan Hurley and the back-to-back national champions more. I am a UConn fan, no bias involved here. I had Oklahoma for a while, but just kind of wrapping my head around it more, I do think the Huskies will prevail. It's a great matchup, though, a Friday night game. Memphis versus Colorado State. Memphis, you're looking at them in the AAC. How much you want to judge that? They're a 5th seed who's 51st in KenPom and 49th in net rating. What does that tell you? Now, they have the resume in terms of the teams they beat. They beat Michigan State. They beat Clemson, Ole Miss, UConn, kind of right before they had their Hawaii collapse in the Maui tournament. But they've also had losses this season to teams like Temple, Arkansas State, and Wichita State. So it's like, how do you judge Memphis? Which Tigers team are we getting? And when you're that inconsistent at this level, Yes, a 6-1 record in quad one games. I'm gonna go with Colorado State here. I am. I think they're a well-rounded basketball team. I'm not in love with the Mountain West, but I feel like Memphis just doesn't have the edge this year. And I don't think they're a fantastic basketball team. And I think they should be given a low. I think they're a seventh seed type team. And I don't think they're a fifth seed type team. And I think Colorado State can exploit that in a 12-5 upset. I like Colorado State to move on to the round of 32. Maryland Grand Canyon. I see a lot of people wanting to pick Grand Canyon in this matchup. Please don't. Please save yourself. Maryland's 10th in net rating, 12th in KenPom, 6th in KenPom defense, 8-7 against quad one teams this year, 14-9 against quad one or two teams, if you want to put it that way. And they've had 3 of their most recent losses come with game-winning shots in the final 10 seconds, 2 of which at the buzzer. This Grand Canyon team cannot keep up on either side of the ball with this Maryland team. I actually think Maryland wins, and they do it big in the round of 64. Missouri versus Drake kind of goes back to the other 6-11 matchup. Well, the 6th seed could score and the 11th seed could defend in that VCU BYU matchup. This game, do you want offense or do you want defense? Missouri could score the ball at will. Drake is one of the best, if not the best, defensive team in the country. I wouldn't put them as number one, considering that they haven't played the competition of other teams, but they allowed the least amount of points per game this season. I mean, they're one of the best defensive teams in the country, and they're actually 6-0 in quad one or two games in their experience playing them. 30-3 this season. It was truly a fantastic year for Drake. I think they're going to win this game. Before wrapping my head around it, I think Drake's going to move on. I think Missouri's a fine basketball team. I think this is a bad matchup for them, though, because Missouri likes to play fast pace, but what Drake does so well, they like to slow down the pace a little bit, and they like to make it their own game, and I think Drake will set the tempo. I think the Bulldogs move on. Don't overthink it. Texas Tech over UNC Wilmington. Kansas, Arkansas, Bill Self versus John Calipari. Absolute cinema. Neither of these teams are great, though. Arkansas is far too inconsistent. I like Kansas, and then St. John's over Omaha. That sets up our round of 32. Let's go through this quick. Same order. Duke over Mississippi State. Cooper Flagg, one of the top players in the country. If he's not healthy before the first round matchup, he'll certainly be healthy over Mississippi State. The Cinderella run ends for Akron. I think Oregon goes to the Sweet 16. BYU, Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's an inconsistent basketball team, a good team, but inconsistent. BYU's offense has them prevailing to the Sweet 16. And then Vanderbilt just doesn't have the offensive firepower to keep up with the bona fide 100%, no question about it, best offense in college basketball in Alabama. Houston, Gonzaga. Houston has lost in the Sweet 16 in back-to-back years as a one seed. I don't think anything's changed. I don't think this is Houston's best team. I don't think anything is going to change. I like Gonzaga in this matchup. I think this is maybe where I should do my Gonzaga rant. I've been kind of waiting to do it now for a while, and I'm going to take away the bracket and just put it on me for a second because I look at this Gonzaga team and I say, how in the world are they an 8th seed? 9th in KenPom, 8th in net rating, 2nd most points per game in the country this year, 4th in field goal percentage, 3rd in point differential. They're one of 11 teams to meet a KenPom requirement. Essentially, 90% of NCAA tournament winners since 2002 have had the 21st or better KenPom offense and 37th or better KenPom defense. Gonzaga hits that requirement, and then Cam Ike and Ryan Nembhard have been studs for them. How are the Bulldogs an 8th seed? I think they're a better team than Houston. I think they'll beat Houston fair and square in the NCAA tournament. Trust me, Gonzaga's going to go far this year. That's a great team. So let's put it back up. Let's get me back in my right positioning here on the screen. I like Gonzaga to upset Houston in the round of 32. Clemson beats High Point. I think Illinois beats Kentucky. Kentucky just never does it in the tournament. Yes, no Calipari. They don't have the firepower. They don't have the star power they had last year with Rob Dillingham and all the great players that they had last year. Sixth man of the year, Rob Dillingham. So, what a fantastic team that was. The fact that they lost to Oakland was truly tragic. For college basketball. That could have been the national championship type team. They never could figure it out in March. I don't think anything will change. Illinois, the Fighting Illini, moving on to the Sweet 16. And I like Tennessee a lot more than I do UCLA this year. Moving back to the top of the bracket, I think Johnny Broom's going to be too much for Kalkbrenner and Ashworth. I don't think anyone else can really step up for Creighton. Auburn's got the depth. I think the Tigers move on to the Sweet 16. Michigan, Texas A&M. Michigan's got a much better defense. They play a brand of basketball that I find more enticing. Michigan moves on. Iowa State, Ole Miss. Ole Miss doesn't play a style of basketball I like. Iowa State's got the offensive firepower. They go to the Sweet 16. And while I thought they were on upset alert here, Marquette, kind of for a similar reason, they just can't shoot the ball at will. and Michigan State's defense is going to be too suffocating for them. I could see Marquette scoring like 55 points in that game. I could truly see this being a lower scoring contest, but one that favors Michigan State. And then in the final region in the West, if the shots are falling, watch out for UConn. We've seen McNeely put up 38 this year, Ball put up 30. Tarsh Reed, I think, had 35 in one game. Like, when that happens, UConn's just as good as any team in the country, but it's so unpredictable and it's so unreliable that I got to go with the Gators, who have been unbelievable in SEC play this year. Maryland's going to completely exploit Colorado State. I'm telling you, Maryland's one of the most underrated teams in the country, and they're going to the Sweet 16. Drake and Texas Tech. I think the Red Raiders are a great team. They're an underrated team. They're not really in conversations for national championships, but kind of the same reason as Missouri. Drake can just slow down the pace, and Texas Tech won't be able to flip it back. Drake's such a great basketball team because they're so different than any team you want to pick as an 11th seed in the NCAA tournament. The Bulldogs to the Sweet 16, and then I like St. John's to move on. Setting up our Sweet 16, Michigan over Auburn. That's where the 1 seed falls. I know I'm kind of going, you know what? I'll go out of order. We'll break that down in a minute. Duke over Oregon, Alabama over BYU. That's a battle of the offense. Alabama's offense is more potent. For Duke, they just have more firepower on both sides of the ball, and they can prevail, setting up a 1-2 over in the East region. We move on to the Midwest. Clemson falls short in the Sweet 16 to Gonzaga. Gonzaga just Clemson's defense cannot keep up with the pace that Gonzaga plays with, and Nemhard's going to be going for 10, 15 assists in that game. I think playmaking-wise is going to be fantastic. Gonzaga, an 8th seed to the Elite 8, and then Tennessee over Illinois, who I don't love, but just matchup-wise, are able to sneak their way to the Sweet 16. Tennessee exploits that. Tennessee to the Elite 8. Again, I like Michigan over Auburn. We can even kind of look into this, right? Obviously, they're not going to give you much kind of statistical breakdown here. If you look against top 25 teams, both teams only have 5 losses. The BPI rank is saying Auburn, fine. I like Michigan's defense more. Dusty May's got experience. He knows how to win in March. Auburn, on the other hand, I feel like continuously finds ways to fall short in this tournament. I like Michigan to move on to the Elite 8, and I like Iowa State to be Michigan State. I don't think Michigan State's a great team, and I think Iowa State's offense is actually going to exploit Michigan State's defense, even though it's usually been the other way around for MSU this year. Setting up a Michigan versus Iowa State Elite 8 matchup. And then down here, Florida over Maryland. I think that's where it comes to an end. I just think that Maryland is so Derek Queen reliant, while Florida has so many playmakers on both sides of the ball who can make things happen. And if Queen is limited somewhat, the Gators are going to move on to the Elite 8. St. John's, Drake, you're literally talking about the 2 slowest paced teams probably in this whole tournament. St. John's like to slow it down even more. And if St. John's can win at Drake's game, I find it hard to believe that the Bulldogs can even pull off that upset, just the way that both of those teams match up. I like the Johnnies to go to the Elite 8. Duke, Alabama, that's the next 1 seed to fall. Currently, I have 3 1 seeds falling before my Final Four. Watch out for that. I like Alabama winning over Duke. Duke has a well-rounded team. They're a much better defensive team. Alabama's defense leaves a lot to be desired, but I think their offense is one of the best we've seen in college basketball in a few years, and I think the Bama Crimson Tide are going to move on to the Final Four, and so will the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I'm all in on Gonzaga this year. I think Tennessee's fantastic. Tennessee could very well win a national championship, and if they do, I won't be mad, disappointed, and I wouldn't be shocked either. But I think Gonzaga's going to beat them. I think they match up better, and offensively, Tennessee likes to slow down the pace. I think Gonzaga could speed it back up, and I think Graham Ike is going to have a huge game. Going back up, Michigan over Iowa State, the Wolverines to the Final Four. I put them as one of my dark horse championship contenders. If they would end up winning it, it would be the longest long shot of the century in terms of a national champion winner going into the NCAA tournament. Michigan to the Final Four, and same with St. John's, meaning some people have all 1 seats in their Final Four. I got none. I think they're all going to go down early, and I think the Johnnies go to the Final Four. Setting up a Final Four, Michigan, St. John's, Alabama, Gonzaga. Give me Michigan. I think at that point, you have 2 great defensive teams, but Michigan's offense is so much more reliable. The number one thing about St. John's, they're such an inefficient shooting team, and you're able to live by it because I think they're able to slow down the pace against Florida. You're able to win at Drake's game, and Kansas is just as inconsistent on both sides of the ball, and you don't really need to talk much about this Omaha game. I think this region is a perfect region for St. John's to get there, but Michigan's a horrible matchup for them in the first game of the Final Four. Michigan to the championship, Alabama, Gonzaga. This is where the run for Gonzaga comes to an end. They can't keep up offensively with Alabama for 40 minutes. The Crimson Tide move on, and as you've been able to see this entire time, Bama over Michigan. It was the other way around in the college football playoff a few years ago. Bama over Michigan, and the Alabama Crimson Tide roll their way as a national champion in the NCAA tournament. I've had 3 different teams winning, by the way, guys, as I've gone through this entire time. So maybe Bama's going to win, maybe they won't. But for now, that's what I got. And that's what I think this is going to be. I think that Bama, their defense is inconsistent. But offensively, you can't tell me there's a team in the country better. And sometimes it's the team that can score at will most that wins you games in college basketball. I think Bama is tremendous. They're a fantastic basketball team. And I think they've kind of flown under the radar. I think that a lot of people have put them in kind of the second tier of SEC teams. I don't believe that. I believe they're better than Auburn. I'll put it right there. I think they're just as good as Florida. I think they're better than Tennessee. I think if you're looking at teams from the SEC, Bama's the standout. And there's no argument for me. No one can tell me that there's an offense in the country that's as prolific as Alabama's. You can't make that argument to me. So I'm not saying it is definitely going to happen, but I am saying confidently, I like Gonzaga in the Final Four. I like Michigan in the Final Four. I think the Johnnies get there, and I do think Bama gets there. And I think if that's how these teams match up and that's how you get there, then I think we're rolling tide in the national championship. I like Bama to win the whole darn thing. How about that? Who came on here thinking that I would have no 1 seeds in the Final Four? You got to be different. They call it the month of madness for a reason, and I am here for it. No 1 seeds in the Final Four. I love Gonzaga this year. I love Michigan this year. I think this is going to be one of the better tournaments we've seen in recent memory. So many teams who play so many different styles. I think it's going to complicate things, but in the best way possible. It's going to add to the unpredictability that comes when you play games in this month. It is the best month. Ian Eagle told us, expect the unexpected. Kevin Harlan tells us, did you just see what we think we just saw? We're going to have many of those moments throughout this NCAA tournament, but it's going to end with the Crimson Tide rolling their way to a national championship. Those are my 2025 NCAA men's basketball March Madness bracket prediction. Hope you guys did enjoy. Hope you guys enjoy my analysis. I believe I know a lot about these teams and how they play and how they're going to be able to exploit each other. And again, Michigan, Gonzaga, St. John's, and Bama in the Final Four, with Bama coming up with the championship. Hope you guys enjoyed. Some more coverage coming up, an interview with Megan Anderson, which I think you guys will find interesting. Fairfield star player. I'm going to have on a few people as well to preview that Fairfield, Kansas State game on the women's side, and we're going to break down a little bit of the women's bracket as well. And stay tuned for more YouTube shorts as we preview both the men's and women's brackets. It's March. It's the month of madness. I cannot love it. Now that my picks are out, I can officially declare it. Chase Coburn signing off. Let the madness begin.